Trump might, after all, still continue to supply Ukraine with weapons. That's at least what the media is writing right now. But we'll talk about this as well as about anything else that has happened along the front lines and behind them in this situation report about the war in Ukraine. Ukraine has attacked the Kamersky chemical plant in Rostov. They are producing rocket fuel, explosives, and parts of ammunition. It was hit, according to the reports. The extent of the damage is unclear. The Russians are saying that they managed to intercept 10 missiles. Mill bloggers are talking about ATACMS and Storm Shadows or Scalp being used. To which degree it was actually successful, I cannot fully confirm as of now. The Russians also attacked Kiev with Iskander-M or KN-23. That's basically the North Korean equivalent. 5 missiles were used against Kiev yesterday. The Ukrainians said they managed to intercept all of them, but fragments have hit targets have hit things on the ground, among them a building where the embassies of Albania, Argentina, Montenegro, Northern Macedonia, Palestine, and Portugal are situated in. Let's switch to the developments along the front line, and here the Russians are advancing close to Leonidovo, which is here. We have a geolocation at this point. According to it here, the Russians managed to get into directly towards Leonidovo, into Novoivanovka. This is on the map here, at this part up here. So the Russians have roughly reached this point and managed to advance another 500 meters in this direction. They also managed to advance at the town of Kruglenkoe, which is here. Recently, the North Koreans have operated in the area up here. Now they have advanced further. We see them in the directly south of the lake here, and we see them to the west of it. On the map, this is roughly here and here. So probably this area as well as this area is now under Russian control, back under Russian control. The Russians are reporting Ukrainian counterattacks in the area of Novoivanovka, which is up here. The Ukrainians are also having, it's also reported that the Ukrainians attacked barracks at Rilsk with ATACMS or with GMLRS. The barracks were filled with Russian soldiers, and according to reports, several officers were wounded or killed in that attack. The videos show soldiers in uniform walking around, confirming that it was very likely a legitimate military target. That's it from the area of Sucha. From Kursk, we switch to Kharkiv, and here we have the Russians advancing inside of Vovchansk, or at least operating further south than usual. We have a geolocation here and here in this area, and if we look on the map, then it is here and here. Here they were attacked by the Ukrainians, so this area might be under Russian control now, or they might have been repulsed. Interesting though that here we have the Ukrainian battalion commander is accusing the Russians to use Ukrainian uniforms for their attacks. And according to the Geneva Convention, the first additional protocol, paragraph 39, it clearly says it's prohibited to make use of the flags or military emblems, insignia or uniforms of adverse parties while engaging in attack or in order to shield, favor, protect, or impede military operations. So it would be a clear war crime if this is confirmed, and at least in the past we had videos of Wagner forces using Ukrainian uniforms. That's it from the area here. We switch over to the Eastern Front, and here we have the Russians advancing somewhat here in the south, in Sarisove here. The geolocation shows that the Russians have reached up to this point. This is roughly at this point here. So they're advancing in this direction. In this case, abandoned Russian vehicles were attacked. So this does not confirm that the Russians have extended their control into this area, but it shows continued attacks in the southern direction. That's already it from the Eastern Front. We switch to the Eastern Front south of the Seversky Donetsk, here fighting around Siversk. Nothing has changed there that I can confirm. And we have something from Chasiv Yar. Here we have Ukrainians being attacked at this point, showing they have extended their positions into roughly this point here. We recently had them here. We see that apparently the Ukrainians are slowly pushing the Russians back here from the, I think it's called a refractory plant, so from that factory here. So maybe some minor changes here, but overall the situation hasn't really changed. Further south, we go into the area of Toretsk, and here we have Russians advancing as well. This is the Russians now in the southern quarter here, showing that they have operated roughly at this point here, and we have them northwest of New York. This is at this position here, so west of Nelipivka, roughly somewhere in this area here. And at the same time, the Ukrainians were doing counterattacks, successful ones as well. We have them here in the, I don't know if this is a part of Leonidivka, but at least it's close to Leonidivka. So we have the Ukrainians operating roughly here at this point. We recently had the Russians operating in this area. So we see that Ukrainian counterattacks are happening there as well. That's it from the Toretsk, New York area. We switch to Pokrovsk, and here we have the Russians in Pishchane. This is up here and getting ever closer towards Pokrovsk. We see them here in the southwestern part of Pishchane on the map. That's at this point here. So the Russians have likely gotten a foothold in Pishchane as of now. That was already it from Pokrovsk. I do not see any change since Wednesday any significant change. Now there are some claims that, for instance, at Soria they gained additional ground in this direction, but I do not see any significant change in the area here. We switch to Kurakhove, and here we have we have actually no serious change that's been reported. Now there are claims. Deep State map here, for instance, shows that this area is now consolidated, but we already had the Russians up here. This was confirmed, so that this area will fall into the Russian hands very soon is obvious. Also, the pocket here is now no longer displayed on the Deep State map. Mashovets, Konstantin Mashovets, a Ukrainian analyst and I think former colonel of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, is saying that the situation here is critical right now as well, because first of all, the Ukrainians have lost all of Kurakhove except for the power plant, according to him. So this would mean that roughly all of this here should be under Russian control as of now as well. And he's also saying that that if the Russians reach Ulaki, then they basically cut off anything from the Ukrainians in all of this area here. So they are roughly 2.5 kilometers away from cutting off all the Ukrainians here, because he shows that the front line there is cut off from the rest of the Ukrainian held territory in the north by the two rivers here, the Vovcha and the Orlova here, Orlova, yeah. So those rivers here are forming a natural barrier towards the Ukrainians. Of course, I guess infantrymen without equipment could probably cross over here, but any heavy equipment will have serious issues. So if the Russians advance in this direction, then all of this is in danger. He recommends either holding every single town and fighting for every single town, which would obviously cause significant losses, or he recommends a timely retreat, which would then obviously mean that the Russians would probably gain more or less all of this area here in a very soon, at a very close time frame. We also from the area have a report from the spokesperson in the area that is in command there. They are saying that it was fake news that the Ukrainian soldiers were cut off down here. They say that they received the order to withdraw, and it's a lie that they were cut off here. Obviously, we have no ways of confirming it. I still have not seen any significant pictures of prisoners of war, or not even significant proof of heavy Ukrainian losses there, because we would expect if there are hundreds of Ukrainian soldiers retreating through a tiny gap here that should allow the Russians to present us with a lot of losses. At least I have not seen the visual proof of this, which could give credence to that claim here that there was no that no own soldiers have been cut off. But of course, we also need to be aware that the claims that Ukrainian soldiers were cut off were published by pro-Ukrainian sources, and official Ukrainian military sources obviously have an interest to keep morale high, so they have a reason to lie if they want to. This should be understood from a source criticism that just because they say there wasn't a pocket doesn't mean there wasn't a pocket, but it says at least the visual evidence for heavy Ukrainian losses or for high numbers of prisoners of war is still lacking to this point. At least I have not seen it. Further west in the Kharkiv area here, we have the Russians advancing close to Nesteryanka. We have that up here at this point, so you can see those two lines. Those are these here, so the Russians have roughly advanced to this point, probably gaining another kilometer west, directly north of Nesteryanka. They have reached up to here, now up to here, so maybe this area here is more or less under their influence as of now. On the Dnipro front, we actually had activity over the last 2 days. Significant. There's always some skirmishes happening there. Now the Ukrainians are reporting that the Russians tried to cross the Dnipro to the western side at the Antonevsky Bridge, but that was defeated. That doesn't make much sense though, because according to all the information, the Ukrainians are holding the eastern side as well. So it's unlikely that the Russians somewhere crossed over here and then drove there to get here, while having the Ukrainians on both sides of the river. I've seen a different Ukrainian source, and they just claimed that they tried to reach the Antonivsky Bridge, which would mean that they attacked in this direction here. This makes a lot more sense to me. So I think the likely attack of the Russians was aiming at this point here, at the base of the ruins of the old Antonivsky Bridge, as the Ukrainians still hold positions here along the Dnipro, and obviously the Russians might want to push them away from this. According to reports, it failed. The attack failed. That bridge here is blown up too, so no heavy equipment can support Russian attacks towards the north, but it's likely that the attack was only aimed here at Dachi, not on the other side of the Antonevsky Bridge or the ruins thereof. That was it with the changes of territory. Not too much has changed. The pressure is high in Kursk, at least to that point, while the Russians still have North Koreans to waste. Also, in the recent press conference, Putin acknowledged that this is only being considered an anti-terror operation, whereas this is the special military operation. So the income for Russian soldiers fighting here is roughly 1/10 of what they're getting here. This would obviously lead to depleting in morale, to lowering of morale of the Russian soldiers here in this area as well, and would be one additional explanation while the Russians haven't succeeded much in this area, despite having a significant troop concentration here as well. But on the other hand, obviously, the Ukrainians are trying tooth and nail to keep as much of the territory as possible for potential future negotiations. In his press conference, Putin also said, when asked about mistakes, he says that the full-scale war wasn't properly prepared, as it was not expected, and if he could do something different, he would have attacked much earlier, showing that by now he sees the mistakes that were done. This is him basically, in this case, affirming that the invasion was quite botched at this point. Also, the Ukrainians for the first time used, this was the wrong one, the Ukrainians for the first time used drones only, UGVs for a ground attack. Some of the UGVs were armed with machine guns, others were armed with explosives to breach enemy positions, and according to the Ukrainians, this was the first ever ground attack only with drones that was done in this direction. And according to the Ukrainians, it achieved its goal. In the end, obviously, though, even if they take positions, in the end they have to pull infantry afterwards. Infantry is far from obsolete, and it's probably not going to be obsolete for a few more centuries or millennia. Then we have news about troop generation. The accusations are continuing that the Russians are forcing conscripts to sign contracts with the military. Again and again, family members and opposition groups are saying that basically the military, the officers are putting high pressure on the conscripts, so they sign the contracts. The likely reason for that is that they are being giving numbers, how many they have to recruit, and they try to reach that by any means. This is obviously leading to some dissent among the civilians and among the parents of those conscripts. Then we have the GUR, the Ukrainian Military Intelligence. They are saying that between 21st of September 2022 and 31st of October this year, 98,461 mobilized men have become casualties. The Russians mobilized a little bit over 300,000 at this point. So after 2 years, roughly 1 in 3 of the Russian mobilized personnel has become a casualty as of now, which obviously also means that 2/3 have not. And casualties has to be understood. This does not mean KIA, not killed in action. That's also those that have only been wounded, but still 1 out of 3 has already become a casualty in the mobilization, which will be a difficulty for future forced mobilizations, especially as they are not being given time when they are being demobilized before the war has ended. Then we have the Russians finally, we have to say, reacting to the threats. Now there are satellite pictures showing that they have started to build, we have here the war zone reporting about this, that they are finally building hardened aircraft shelters. The Russians have lost a fair number of planes in the past by light attacks with light drones. So that means of attacks that carry small explosives, that carry some shrapnel maybe, but where a simple concrete shelter with maybe 2-3 meters of thickness would have saved the planes. The Russians never had that, especially in the central part of the Soviet Union, because it was too far away from the front line, from a potential front line, so they simply saved on the expenses. Now, of course, the front line is much closer, and they have changed, and they started to build their own fortifications or their own shelters for their planes. Then we have a video here showing an interesting development too. The Ukrainians apparently have created an anti-personnel mine out of 3D printed materials that is really simple, set up really simple, and takes a screw as a firing pin. Obviously, thin enough plastic will crumble under the moment it's being stepped on, and a primer will then ignite the explosives that will probably destroy the foot that was used and thus disable the personnel here. And this is one that was found damaged and is being disassembled here by one of their soldiers. In the political sphere, we have the report by Ukraine that they are going to stop sending gas towards the west on the 1st of January. So far, Ukraine was still using its pipelines to deliver Russian gas towards its western customers despite of the war, but the contract ran out to the end of this year, and they will stop any further deliveries to the west on the 1st of January. Slovakia and Hungary are really angry about this, because both of them are more or less dependent on those gas deliveries, but Ukraine will not help Russia to sell more of its gas in the future. And I guess the fact that Slovakia and Hungary are not supporting Ukraine right now is adding to that decision in Kiev. And finally, we have, I guess, good news. Trump wants 5% NATO defense spending target. That's obviously really ambitious, especially if you look at the financial setup inside of Europe. But the interesting part is, but plans to continue supplying military aid of Ukraine. We can expect that he's probably going to use that as some kind of bargaining chip, like you want Ukraine to be aided. I'm willing to do that, but you have to prove that you're better allies. Whether or not he'll achieve that is a different question. And in a later point, he shows that his staff apparently is not really that competent, because they say that one of his staff said that 3.5 are probably enough. That was it? 2 people, I think it's here. One person said that they understood that Trump would settle for 3.5%. A negotiation isn't really that effective if your limits are publicly said before. You start a negotiation with something where you are willing to move from, not by publicly announcing what's your aim. But 3.5 is a lot more realistic, obviously, and still will be very hard to achieve. But on the other hand, that would lead to significant investments in the defense industry that then could be aided to rearm Europe in regards to the Russian threat. And obviously that could help finance aid for Ukraine. In this context, it also can be understood that Volkswagen in Germany is under current deep trouble. And they are planning to close 3 of their factories. And now it's being said that one of the factories is going to be sold. And the German media said it's going to be sold to a defense company. So it might actually be the case that one of the Volkswagen factories might in a few years start to produce armored vehicles inside of Germany. But we'll have to see about this. But that was it from me for today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. It helps with the algorithm. The next video will not come before the 4th of January. I have not done any kind of vacation whatsoever since the beginning of this year. If I haven't done a video, then only because I was traveling or otherwise indispensable. Otherwise, in the last weeks, you've seen me do a video almost every day. So I'm going to take 2 weeks off and over Christmas and New Year's. And I hope I'll see you again on the 4th of January. I wish all of you a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year and Happy Hanukkah to everyone who's celebrating those festivities according to his beliefs. And that's going to be it from me for now. Leave a comment. What do you think about the current developments? And if you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. This channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you. If you like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. But that's it from me for now. Thank you for watching and I'll be back.